Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve human need, for these high purposes do we unite in worship.
Good morning. When Reverend Barbara asked me a few weeks ago if I could fill in for her this morning, I eagerly and maybe naively said yes. I found the theme of the Soul Matters for October Courage to be inspiring, and the opportunity to present some ideas around this notion that I have that it takes courage to be civil appealed to me. But I'm going to start this morning with a confession. I really struggled to write this message. Part of my struggle has been that I've been feeling lots of self-imposed pressure. And it sounds like this in my head. Well, you're a seminary student now, so this should be good. It should be easy. Which, of course, I know is ridiculous. One thing has no bearing on the other. But the other part of my struggle has been an awareness that there is so much going on in this faith community that I want to help heal. And I wonder, how do I do that? I wonder what impact my words can have on you, on us, on this congregation, our community, and the world we live in. And then thankfully it occurred to me, I am not alone in wondering about these things. Well, maybe worrying about seminary, you guys aren't worried about that so much. But I know that many of you wonder about your impact in the world, on this congregation, and in our larger community. And we're all wondering what the future holds for us here. So even with all that wondering, I am certain about a few things. And one of those certainties is the impact that we all have on one another, even, or maybe especially, when we're not paying attention. And that how we behave and how we use our words does matter. It matters in here. It matters out there, at home, with friends, with family, colleagues, and neighbors. And it matters with people we don't even know, and with whom we think we might not have anything in common. And I am certain that civility matters. So there you have it, my confession, and a bias or two. So let's go. What do you think of when you think of civility? I know when I first started thinking about this a few years ago, I thought about politeness and good manners, about saying please and thank you and respecting my elders, holding the door open for the person who comes behind me, not raising my voice in an unladylike manner, and maybe even adding yes, sir, or yes, ma'am to the end of a sentence. You see, I grew up in a Southern household where Emily Post's Book of Etiquette had an equal, if not greater, place of reverence in our family library, as did the Bible. Having lived more than 60 years with that set of behaviors ingrained in me, it's the lack of manners that irks me when I'm in traffic, where I secretly swear alone in the safety of my car at those tailgating, smoke-spewing pickup trucks who come up too close behind me. Or when I react at the rudeness of elected officials who tell lies, name call, and demean and degrade those with whom they disagree. And I come away from those interactions thinking to my very self-righteous self, what is wrong with those people? They're so uncivilized. And then there's cyberbullying and hostile messaging, abrupt emails, rude personal interactions, and caustic online posts and reviews, often done anonymously, that have normalized an uglier and less empathic side of human behavior. And it's colored our politics and even our entertainment. Witness the humiliations routinely showcased on so-called reality TV, the snarls of call-in shows and the acidic tone of popular blogs. And then there's Twitter and trolls who maliciously harass, attack, or threaten to hurt us. And having been the victim of trolling in my role with the League of Women Voters, I know what it feels like to be threatened by anonymous haters. It's hurtful and scary. And I don't know about you, but I notice that I'm having more and more conversations now about the lack of civility in our society. Newspaper columnists write about how we as a culture, from children to adults, in both public and private, have grown coarser and cruder in tone. Some say that in many respects, our nation has abandoned all civility. And when I have conversations with friends who agree that the world is becoming more uncivilized every day, I get to be right again and again. We have proof, we tell each other, each of us sharing some tale of incivility that we've experienced. But what do we mean when we talk about civility? Webster defines civility as civilized conduct, especially courtesy or politeness, or a polite act or expression. But I think it's more useful to understand the root of the word. Civility comes from the word civis, which in Latin means citizen. It also has roots in Old French, where the term civilité denoted the state of being a citizen, and hence good citizenship or orderly behavior. And the sense of what we now consider politeness arose in the mid-16th century. But further adding to my understanding of civility is the preponderance of civil society organizations that I encountered in the Foreign Service working in post-conflict or faltering countries. Civil society organizations in that context are non-state actors whose aims are neither to generate profit nor to seek governing power. Civil society organizations unite people to advance shared goals and interests. So given all of that, I ask us to consider this morning civility as a spiritual practice. Perhaps you've already picked up on a few of the ideas from our readings this morning. Love, entertaining new ideas and welcoming new people, kindness, empathy, listening for understanding, acceptance, introspection, and self-reflection, and the willingness to learn and set aside our own need to be right are all behaviors that we attribute to civility. So are these sounding familiar? If they are, it's because they're among the behaviors that are part of our relational covenant, the promise we make to be together with civility. In the prayer this morning, we asked the God of gifts to make us be one of a kind, but one with a kind. To be called not to be more like others, but be more of ourselves, daring to be graceful and more humankind. And in the book, The Someone New, the author reminded us that kindness is greater than fear. And Naomi Shihab Nye showed us that empathy and sharing of ourselves, even when it might be risky or covered in powdered sugar, can turn a situation around. And she reminds us that all is not lost. And I don't know about you, but I know that I need those reminders of graciousness of humans, the proof that collectively we are still more than ugly internet comments and memes. For more than a year now, I've had the honor to serve on the Healthy Congregation Committee, working with you to develop agreements, our covenants, about civility. And essentially, we've all been doing the work of being good citizens, not just in this church, but work that carries us out those doors too. Within these walls, we have all agreed to behave in such a way that we honor each other and hold each other capable and accountable to do that work. And we're continuing to create a safe space to practice that work. That work is spiritual practice. Does the covenant set a tone and put up some guardrails for the community? Absolutely. But it's so much more than that. It is an invitation to really live into those ribbons that some of us have on our name tags that label us as a welcoming community. It's an invitation for self-reflection before speaking our opinion at a town hall meeting. It's an invitation to consider that when we speak, if what we have to say is in the best interest of the greater good, or am I just speaking to be right about something and therefore making someone else wrong? It is forgiving old and new hurts, holding space for people and ideas that are new. It is giving ourselves and each other grace. Civility as a spiritual practice, is a gift and a covenant with ourselves where it takes courage to own our own behavior and words and to make choices and strive to uphold the goodness of who we are. It takes courage to help ease another's pain, to make room for differing perspectives and life experiences and see what we have in common. It is the practice of reflecting on what's driving our own emotions and interactions with those around us. And it's the courage to make adjustments where necessary and to make space for others to do the same. I don't think we're built to like everyone, but I do think that we're built to behave civilly. Let me give you an example. I had the opportunity recently to participate in the national program called One Small Step. And I think there's a few others here who've volunteered to participate in that program as well. With that program, I was paired up with a person I've never met to have a 50-minute personal conversation, which was recorded for the Folk Life Archives of the Library of Congress. My partner was a lifelong resident of Cortez, whose political ideology and religious upbringing could not have been any more different than mine. In that conversation, which was facilitated by a third party with some questions to get us going, we covered far-ranging topics. One question that we asked each other was, who were the most influential people in your life? His were a Catholic priest and an uncle who taught him about family and community. And mine were my mom and my son who taught me about speaking up for justice and forgiveness. We talked about what it was like to live in the same place for your whole life and what it took to never settle down and to live someplace else in the world. We talked about food and what makes us happy. Sometimes it was food. And we talked about what hopes we have for our grandkids' future. And while our experiences in life have been totally different, and while we do not agree on such things as ownership of automatic weapons and a women's right to choose, we did have more in common than we did not. Our love of family, service to community and nation, belief in the inherent dignity of every person, the experience of overcoming personal hardships, the encouragement of spiritual growth in our respective faiths, and a belief in a higher power helped us find our common values and to see each other's humanity. Will we be close friends? Unlikely. But we were both able to take back to our families and our spheres of influence a reaffirmed belief in civility through our willingness to take a chance on being in conversation with a stranger and to see the world through a different lens. At no point in that 50 minutes did we need to say, well, I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree. It was more like, I appreciate you sharing about your life and what matters to you, and thank you for listening to me do the same. Unknowingly, I think we'd both entered that conversation with the same intention, to grant grace to each other and to be open to a new point of view. And because of that, we were able to see each other as people and not as the composite of what we thought we knew based on geography or political party or history or gender or all the other stereotypes that we carry around. And we weren't trying to convince each other of anything. We were just simply being civil human beings. For me, unexpectedly, that conversation was a spiritual experience. It was the setting aside of my need to be right and suspending some beliefs from the past that I've made into a rationale about many things. It was a willingness to, as the book tells us, let kindness be greater than fear. It was listening to truly understand, and I will tell you that that hour contained a healthy dose of humility and humor. So I believe it is those things that make up the spiritual practice of civility that we can all bring to each day, to each person, and each situation we encounter. Civility is those manners that I learned growing up, and it's the courage to love ourselves and each other over and over again. It's in the most simplistic terms, maybe, civility is to show up as love and roam the world working for the greater good with as much grace as possible. And maybe, just maybe, my spiritual practice will include powdered sugar and no longer swearing in my car, and instead showing that tailgater the light of love. May it be so.